All right, with that, I'm going to introduce Jennifer Hansen. She's a senior managing partner at Life Sciences for recruiting. She's talking about resume writing 101 and interview ethics. So let's give her a hand up first.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me okay? Yeah. That's not my element. I usually, go to clients and knock on their doors. So they're with us today. So thank you again for having us. We're really excited to be a part of this event. I'm Jennifer Hansen, and I head up the life sciences at Proven Recruiting, and we do staffing for the biotech, pharmaceutical, and medical device industry, mainly in San Diego, but we can staff throughout the country. And I have Sydney Schultz here, and she is our senior recruiter in the life sciences space, and she will be speaking today as well. All right. So today we're going to be talking mainly about resume writing, and then we're going to branch into LinkedIn and the social media aspect. The interviewing tips we have laid out on the table. We just found that with the internet nowadays and everyone's using it, it's good to touch on it. Sydney's a guru in that area, so she's going to give you some great tidbits. So resume writing is hard. It's one of those things that you really do. It is emotional, right? Because you need to think about what have I done, and you're putting it all on paper, and it's a stressful time. We do always recommend that you do an outline to start, just to get your thoughts in order. And we always do. And this is, I think a lot of people are surprised by this, but when a recruiter or a hiring manager looks at your resume, they spend about 10 seconds. And the reason why I say that is you want to have keywords out there that are going to catch their eye, or that'll be run in their system that'll pull the resume, because they're not like actually reading it at first. Now, if they like it in 10 seconds, then they'll go back and read it, but you got to get through that 10-second period. So that's why the resume is super important, that you put effort into it and tweak it as you go. So I would say we say that 40% of hires come from LinkedIn. So that again is the social media aspect, and Sydney will touch on that. 15% of hires come from referrals. So reaching out to your fellow friends, your colleagues, past coworkers, past managers, asking who they know, and really networking and being an advocate for yourself. And the rest come from applications from the job boards. So that could be Indeed and other sites. So searching for a job really is a job. I'm going to use my husband as an example, which he's not going to like, but he just recently was laid off from Derm Tech, and he spent hours a day looking for a job. And luckily he landed and he started Monday. But it really is, it's a full-time thing. You're following up, you're waiting to hear back, you're writing thank you notes. And so it's just one of those things that, if you're mindful, it does take time. And if you're working and looking for a job, that is, it's like having two jobs. It's very stressful, not to mention you have family and life, right? So just mentally be prepared for that. It is actually a job. Not hearing back sucks. So in the industry, we call it ghosting, when you reach out to someone and they just don't return your call, don't return your email, right? And it happens to everyone. So the best of candidates, you could have a great interview and not hear back, and you're like, what is going on? And it doesn't feel good. And I mean, we mentioned this because it happens to everyone. And sometimes you get in your own head, like, oh my gosh, why is no one getting back to me? And just know it happens to all candidates, and it does. It sucks. And that's something that's, when you work with recruiters, it is a little better, because we at least get back to you and kind of give you some insight of the backstory of what's going on with the job search. And you should take more time with people. So that's why events like this are super important. You really branch out and get to know folks, because that goes back to, hey, 15% of hires are through referrals. So if you meet someone at a networking event and they're looking for a marketing assistant or lab tech, whatever it may be, you might stumble upon a new connection or new job at the event. So just meeting people and then staying connected with them on LinkedIn, which Sydney will touch on as well. And people say you should update your resume and LinkedIn at least once a year. And I can say I didn't do that. So I was with another company for 15 years. I didn't even own a computer, so that's not ideal. And I decided I need to start looking, and I didn't own a computer, and I didn't have a resume for 15 years. So I'm here, I'm telling you to do this, but you should keep it up to date, even if you're not looking, because it's good. And if you accomplish a project, it's fresh on your mind, just add it to your resume. And then whether you're looking in a year or 5 years from now, you'll have it in like one concise spot and it's not quite as stressful. So, and you never know what can happen to, God forbid you're laid off or something, then you're more prepared.
Also on that note of like updating your resume, like for those of you that are starting your careers, or even if you're farther along in your career, I always recommend keeping some sort of like Google Doc or something that you have access to from your personal email account, and keeping track of any projects you've worked on, any notable accomplishments you've had in your career. So that way, as you're going and applying to roles or things come up, you can add them to your resume, and then you're not going back, okay, I started this job 3 years ago. What are all the things I've done since being here? And then even once a year, trying to look back on all the things you've done can be a lot. So just as you're doing things, just, kind of keep a running tally, and then you can add notable ones to your resume as you're filling it out every year.
Okay, so we're going to go over the do's and don'ts of resume writing. So as far as your resume length, it really depends on your level of experience. So we do staff anyone from lab techs up to PhDs that have been in industry for several years, senior directors, VPs. And so if you're more junior in your career, lab tech entry level individual straight out of college, and usually your resume will be about, I would say, a page, probably not more than a page and a half, but usually 1 page. And then as you progress with experience, or let's say you go back to school for a master's or PhD, the resume will go into the 2 and 3 page mark. And we say that because we just want to be mindful of, you don't want to put too much information on the document. You want to still keep it concise, but also make sure it makes sense to highlight what you've done. So it really should match your level of experience. You want to keep it simple and consistent. So it's important that you use professional fonts and formatting and spacing. And I know this sounds very straightforward, but again, go back to the 10 seconds. If someone's looking at your resume for 10 seconds and you have spacing errors or typos or a crazy italic font that doesn't go with the other fonts, they might not even read the words. They might just go, oh, gosh. So you want to make it, you don't want to get flagged for something like that. So just stay very in the professional font, and just make certain it's very consistent, and the spacing and alignment looks aesthetically pleasing. And you want to quantify your accomplishments. So often people say, I'm responsible for, and you say, which is fine, but you also want to say, I accomplished this on this project, or I headed up X, Y, and Z. So try to highlight what came from it as well, not just like what you were doing. So it really just gives the resume more content that's applicable to the reader. And very important, it depends on what background you are, but I think especially in the sciences, it's good to have a technical skill section, really in any discipline. But the technical skill section is important because if they're just skimming your resume, giving it a couple seconds, they're going to see certain keywords that are going to be of interest to them. And then you might go in the yes pile for a phone call. And not only that, but especially nowadays where there's computer, generated programs where they're like just typing in a keyword. And if your resume doesn't have it, it won't get pulled up on the search. So, for example, in the sciences, like PCR and ELISA, and maybe you've done, protein assays, but you didn't put ELISA on there. And then an HR person just looks up ELISA and your resume is not flagged. So again, it's for all disciplines, not just science, but we highly recommend a technical skill section at the very top of the resume. Any questions so far? Because I know I'm kind of just like chatting away. Yes.
Well, I know, but nowadays a lot of people use chat to kind of upload their resume and say, hey, here's the job description, can you insert some keywords? Do you think that's useful? Do you think it'd be a helpful way to get in?
Well, it's funny because she's gonna touch on that whole
Well,
subject.
yeah.
I'm not the person for that because I have yet to use it, so.
I can answer your question a little bit without going too much into it, but yes, I do think it's helpful. I would definitely recommend, I would not let ChatGPT write your resume for you.
Yeah.
However, you can put a job description. Yeah, you can use the job description. Basically, you can do like,
Here's my resume.
yeah, give a resume, here's a job description, do they align, or am I missing anything? Also, like, typically, rule of thumb, at least what I've noticed, is on a job description, the first like 3 to 5 job duties and the first 3 to 5 requirements are typically the ones that they expect you to already have experience with going into the role. So if you see specific keywords on the job description in those sections, even if it's not, specific, right? Or even if something super simple like Excel or Microsoft Office, right? Like, right, everyone pretty much they knows how to use it, but if they're looking for someone that is like an expert in it, you want to make sure that like that software or that skill is like highlighted with that specific term and like make sure that it mirrors what's in the job description. But yes, I would definitely recommend using ChatGPT to like tailor your resume.
Or add keywords.
Add keywords, exactly, yeah. I also recommend making, I know she kind of mentioned like starting with an outline. I typically also recommend having like a master resume with like everything you've ever done on it, and then using that master resume, taking things off as you go.
And I know like nowadays, like latex resumes are kind of like the hot thing, or they were for a while. Is there like a new kind of format that you would recommend? Is there like a gold standard format, or is there just like anything kind of works? There's no.
I don't think there's any specific like formatting. I will say PDF is the most transferable. Word, Pages, oftentimes like, right, you're going between Mac and PC, when you save it, the formatting can get weird. It's not as transferable. So PDF definitely, is the easiest to apply with. It's most consistent. Then also most people are looking on a phone or a smaller screen or even a bigger screen than what you're looking on. And especially on your phone, Word will move lines down and it reformats it. So I typically recommend PDF, like however that looks to you. And then this is on the next page as well, but keep it simple, like not too many colors, not too many, like don't put a picture. Try to keep it like very easily digestible. Like think about if you were looking at your resume, what would be the first thing, or like ask a friend, hey, when you look at my resume, what are the first 3 things that stand out to you? And if they're saying, well, there's a lot going on or it seems crowded, like maybe get a little bit.
Yeah, so personal question. So say you're in marketing or a field that you want more of a brand to your name. Would you recommend having a base resume for AI to be able to read and then a secondary resume later on in the interview process that has a little bit more personal branding, maybe a photo, maybe colors, something like that?
Question. I would say typically not in regards to like photos and colors, but I will say, candidates always have, you will have multiple resumes. Right, so like for myself, I have a science background, so I could have went lab, so maybe I have a lab resume. But I also enjoy tech support, customer service, sales. Maybe I have so I have like 3 different resumes depending on what type of job I'm applying for. So you will definitely have different resumes. I think, having a general one, to your point, like an AI one, I think that's fine, but I still I want to go overboard with photos and colors nonetheless. I do see that a little bit. I know what you're saying because you want to, exemplify what you've done, but you still want to keep it more on the professional or, you won't say standard, but.
I also feel like it's not very often that you have a chance to share a new resume during the interview process. Usually, whoever you speak to first, whatever resume you applied with, is just like attached to calendar invites or sent to people. I think an easier way and a better way to create a personal brand is through your LinkedIn profile. Like 90% of people are going to look up your LinkedIn before you interview just to see kind of what you look like, kind of where, like what your background is outside of your resume. So you can build a personal brand on your LinkedIn, whether that's with your heading picture or your profile picture, right? Like people have their dogs in their profile, but you want to keep it professional, but you can show your personality with that. So I would maybe tailor it that way. But yeah, in the back.
I wanted to know how both of you feel about multiple colors on a resume, specifically like 1 or 2, so beyond black and white.
I think it's fine if it's like a neutral color. I've noticed a lot more people like the lines separating each section are a color, or the head, like the section titles will be a different color. I would just make sure it's consistent throughout. I would say if you are gonna use colors, just keep in mind that that's where people's eyes are gonna go first, is to the things that are colored. So if you are, putting things in different colors, make sure that's the place where where you want people's eyes to go to on that resume. I wouldn't recommend doing a lot of different colors, like mid-sentence or bolding and underlining certain things. I think that can get a little bit distracting and kind of take away. But I do think if you wanted to do like subject headers and the page or the section separators in a color, I would keep it neutral. I wouldn't do like pinks or greens. I would do like navy blues. I mean, it sounds boring, but ultimately, right? Like it is I to your point, like wanting to this all depends on the job. My sister's a graphic designer. Her resume was very different than the type of resume that you'd be applying for a scientific role. So also keep in mind your field, and kind of what types of, if you're applying for a more creative role, then you do want to show a little bit more creativity on your resume with that. So keep that in mind as well. But yeah. Yeah.
Like I saw on the your presentation that you have like include like URLs. Like if we are applying to the field where we don't have that much experience, we have a lot of projects that's done on our own. Would it be important to like include that as a link, or like how would it be included projects that we've done prior to?
I think it's
I don't know what it is.
Yeah.
You're gonna say the same thing.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, if you're an engineering major and you're doing a lot of different like group projects, thesis projects, kind of things like that, there's different ways to go about it. If you have publications or like a link that you can show, like your specific, right? If it's graphic design one, you want to show your portfolio, or if you have publications and you want to show your Google Scholar links, like I would put the URLs for that. If it's, hey, I did this project in school and this is what we accomplished, and you don't have a lot on your resume, I would recommend like kind of to structure it, right? You would have, basically you want to go like the most important to least important. So if you're recently graduating school, your education should be at the top of your resume, right? Because that's the like most relevant and recent thing. And then you would have your technical skills section. And then underneath that, you would have, either any internships or projects. So you could do like relevant work experience, relevant projects, kind of list anything relevant to the role. If you don't have any internship experience, you could do a relevant coursework section and list all your classes that were like tailored to that role. So engineering, any engineering classes you took. And then under the relevant coursework section, you could list specific projects. There's different ways to structure, but I would definitely recommend having them, especially if you're looking to fill space and kind of beef up your resume. If it's something you can articulate into words and you don't have something physical for them to click on and look at the results of that project, I would put it on your resume in words. If you want to highlight one or two projects in words on your resume and link the rest of them, that's also fine. So kind of up to you and how much you have, but yes, I would definitely recommend putting them on there if there's not a lot of other relevant experience you want.
Yeah, that's a good question, because as you progress in your career, you're gonna have jobs that are relevant to what you're looking for. But in the beginning, you're just starting out. So often our entry-level candidates might feel like, oh, I didn't think to put the project on my resume because it wasn't paid. That's okay. Like if you're starting out and it's a project that you did, whether it's paid or not, it shows an accomplishment and you're still junior enough that you're building your resume out. You don't have a lot of experience yet, right? So that's a good question. And I agree.
Yeah. Also kind of on that same realm, if you're putting something in your technical skills section and you've got that skill, like you used it more frequently in your projects, I would make sure that you list somewhere under that project that skill, whether it's the software or, the specific technique or whatever it is, like highlight it in that section. So that way they can see, it didn't just come from their coursework or the regular classes. They also did a separate project where they got more hands-on experience than like a typical person would have gotten in their coursework. So make sure you also highlight that. Same thing with your internships or any roles that you've had in your career. Like if it's in your skills section, make sure to highlight also in your experience where it came from so that you can see like roughly how much experience you have with it. So then they can determine, are you a beginner, are you, expert, are you intermediate, and then kind of use that information to determine like what level who you would fall in.
Absolutely.
If you were applying for essentially the same job, but one company was offering 10 positions versus another company that might be offering 100 or 200 positions, would you write the same resume?
You're saying they,
It's the same job, just different companies, one with,
one has one and one has 100. I would personally send the same resume. Yeah. But if the jobs are different, of course, I tailor it different. But based on the volume, I would change it, yes. Now, I might like include in a cover letter, like, hey, if they're hiring 20 people, like I've been a part of a ramp up before. You can even put a bullet point, like, hey, I was a part of a team that was, 50 of us were hired to start a ramp up project. Or you can put a little bullet point there, but for the most part, that's still great experience. You might keep it on both resumes anyway. So I'd probably just keep it the same resume.
I was gonna say if there's any notable, like I would just make sure, like I think I can tell as someone who gets a lot of resumes from people, you can tell when someone's just applying to anything and everything. They're going based off the job title or the industry. They're not necessarily reading the role. So like with that, like I wouldn't just apply to all 200 positions without looking through the job description, because there might be something that's not on your resume that you have that you want to add, and that could be the difference between your resume getting seen and it not. But also you want to make sure that you're applying to a job, right? That you at least have some foundation in. You don't have to be an expert in it, but like some, and then you want your resume to reflect like, hey, like I'm not just randomly applying for this. I do have some relevant experience, even if it's not a 20-year career in it, right? So to your point, if all the job descriptions are copy and pasted exactly the same, then yes, you're fine using the same resume. But just make sure you take a glance at it to see if there's anything else on there that you feel like you need to add or change on your resume to make yourself look like a better fit. Anything else on this?
Good, wonderful question. Thank you. All right. So when you're writing your resume, here are some don'ts, which some have already been highlighted today. But of course, you're going to not use I in the resume. So stop using first person. So, this is a professional document. You don't want to say I was responsible for, running Eliza. You'll just say responsible for or in charge of, or however you phrase it, but you definitely don't want to use first person. So the objective, this is funny because I've been in this industry a long time, and I think back in the day, the objective is really important. And I think things have evolved where you don't see as many objectives anymore. But if you do write an objective, make certain that it really provides something. So let's say you're applying for a research associate, thinking research associate position. That doesn't, of course you are, you just applied to it. So I think nowadays you'll see like a little summary, like maybe, 2 to 3 quick sentences that really tie in who you are, that are relevant to the job that you're applying for. That's fine. What you don't want to do is have an objective that is not what you're applying for. So kind of going back to if you have multiple resumes and then you accidentally send your sales resume to your research resume or to your research job, you're not going to get interviews. You really, if you have multiple resumes and multiple objectives, make certain you submit them to the correct position. But we do recommend, writing an objective that is meaningful and not just fluff. So using inconsistent tenses is something that we see often, and we do help candidates correct it. So you don't want to go from present tense to past tense to present tense, because it just feels inconsistent. It's not as smooth to read, it's not as professional. So you just want to stick in the tense that you are in. Including a photo, again, this is something I think maybe back in the day people did, but nowadays definitely say don't include the photo. Sydney did reference it already, but often if you look at your resume, they're going to go straight to LinkedIn and look you up. And so just the resume is not, the photo is not necessary. Or personal website. And then listing hobbies or personal interests. I think, it's just good that you keep it more tailored to what you've done in a professional setting as well. Because again, most often people will check you out online to see a little bit more about what you are. And then in the interview, if it comes up organically, you can talk about other things to make you seem, I guess, more human, so to speak, but more personable. But you don't want to like have, I'm not going to have on my resume, like I have 3 kids and their ages and whatnot. Like, yes, of course, I'll probably bring it. If it comes up in the interview, I'll talk about them, but it's not something I'm going to have to forefront there. So. Any questions?
The don'ts are a little bit more subjective. So obviously I would say the main thing here is tense, especially between sections. So, or like between jobs. So if you're going through your whole history, like in let's say your first role, like you want each bullet point of each section to be consistent. So in your current role, it could be present tense, and your past role could be past tense. That's fine, but just make sure like each specific job, they're all consistent. And then, like if you abbreviate a number or a technique or a software in your skills section, make sure it's also abbreviated throughout your resume. And then same thing with punctuation. If you have a period at the end of a couple of the sections, either have it at the end of all of them, like at the end of each sentence or after none of them. Again, it's more so to make it look clean, especially a lot of roles like attention to detail. And oftentimes they'll determine that like from how your resume looks. So just things to keep in mind, like typos, stuff like that. Make sure you keep an eye out for that.
Yeah, and I've had a few people read over your resume too, because you'll be surprised that clients will just knock someone out because there's a typo on the resume. So important. All right, so now Cindy is going to talk about online presence.
Yes, I don't think I need
She's
it.
got a loud voice.
Can you guys hear me back there? Okay, cool. Yeah, LinkedIn, I think again, this is another one of those things. Some people use it, some people don't. I think that, and some people's LinkedIn's have a lot of information and some have none. And I guess to kind of give you like some insight into like kind of what happens on the back end, like when you get messages from recruiters, like contacting you about a role that they have. Essentially what we're doing when we do our searches is typically like keyword searches or title searches. And there's like a bunch of different things, but oftentimes we're looking for keywords that might be relevant to the role that we're working on. So kind of going back to like how your resume is with keywords kind of being in like a technical skill section and also being elaborated like further down, I would just make sure that when we do the search for keywords, it will pull that keyword that's anywhere on your LinkedIn profile, whether that's in your skills section, your about section, under each position. But just make sure that like somewhere on your LinkedIn profile is any like specific technical skills that you want someone to know that you have. So kind of going back to that, like making sure you're updating it regularly, use it regularly. The way the LinkedIn algorithm works on the back end is the people that are the most like active on LinkedIn come up first on a search because LinkedIn recognizes those people as more likely to respond to the message. So engaging with content, whether that's liking things, commenting on things, sharing posts that you find interesting, following pages of companies that you're interested in, whether that's if you're interested in working there, interested in keeping up with them, connecting with people regularly, updating your profile regularly. These are all things that like LinkedIn kind of factors into like how early in a search you'll come up. And then with again, like sharing content, I would say professional relevant articles, photos and updates, you can still show your personality through that. Let's say, someone posts about their dog or going to a dog park or going to the beach or whatever, like you can still share and interact with that post. It's not gonna be unprofessional. I would stick away from anything. I would keep away from anything political on LinkedIn. You don't want that to be the reason, right? Like that someone passed on your resume because they either felt like you were, and if that's something that's happened to you, that they're aligned with your like political views and like your political stance, that's fine, you can do it, but just know it might rule you out from opportunity potentially. So keep your LinkedIn profile, like anything you're interacting with and engaging with, professional, but definitely still interact with things that you find interesting, or don't just like, I mean, I guess you can just like anything and everything that you want to, but the more content you're liking that you're interested in, the more content you're going to get on your feed that matches your interest. And then, yeah, you can write your own articles. It's very easy to write an article on LinkedIn. If you are doing like projects or notable accomplishments, you can write an article about it. You could pin it on your profile. You can, pretty much do anything you want on your LinkedIn profile. So definitely write your own articles, share articles, use a professional looking headshot. Again, you can't show your personality in your headshot. You don't have to be like, in a suit and tie, standing there, like looking boring. Like you can do something that looks fun. I just wouldn't be like, like at a concert, like screaming in the back, things like that. Keep it like professional, like something that you wouldn't mind your future boss seeing. But again, if it shows your personality, like I saw one time, this girl was wearing like pajamas in her picture, but they were like really cute Christmas pajamas and she had her dog with it. And so like, it was a conversation starter. So like, you can, like, if it shows your personality, you can do it, but, kind of be mindful of what's professional, what you want to see.
Do you have to necessarily put all your job experience on LinkedIn if it's on your resume, or is it just like whatever you think would be best to show to the
That's a good question. What you don't want to happen, for those of you that didn't hear, she asked if everything on your resume has to be on your LinkedIn, or if you just want your LinkedIn to showcase what you want people to see. If you are applying to jobs, like what you don't want to happen is someone looks at your LinkedIn and it doesn't align with your resume, and then they think, okay, something like, is one of these a lie? I do think also, like, if you work in the service industry at all, or like kind of had any roles outside of your field, I would still recommend having those on both your resume and your LinkedIn, because it does show that you have worked before, you've held a job, you can show up to work reliably, they can count on you, you know what it's like to be in the field. So I would recommend putting everything. Now, if you've had like, I would just say if it's on your resume, I would put it on your LinkedIn profile is typically like my rule of thumb. If you have more stuff on your LinkedIn, that's fine. Like if you have a bunch of other jobs that are already on there, it's a lot of work to go in and take them off. I just wouldn't have anything on your resume that's not on your LinkedIn.
Yeah, I agree. And people do really, they'll compare them. They'll say, okay, this resume is up to date, but now on LinkedIn it hasn't shown what they've done in 10 years. And the one thing, if you have jobs outside of your industry, like let's say you were a barista or something, it's good to have your relevant work experience and then other work experience. Now, I was a waitress forever, but I'm very old, much older now, 20 something years into my career. So I don't have that on my resume. But, earlier on when I was in my 20s, I did. So it'll change as you progress in life, but so you can have relevant work experience and then other work.
Yeah, especially if you do have like internships and things like that, I would put that under relevant. If you don't have any internships and you just have, right, like work experience that's not in your field, that's where I would put a relevant coursework and a project section, and then also like work experience or, a section just for your work. If your internship is the most relevant work experience you have, or the most recent work experience you have, there's no reason to separate, which you kind of want the relevant experience to be grouped together and other experience. Oftentimes an internship is for the summer, and then you've had other jobs in the school years in between, and you don't want that to like fill the space, right? If they're looking at your last 2 or 3 positions, you want the ones that are, if you're entering your career, you want the ones that are most relevant at the top, which is why putting the relevant section kind of shows, okay, she did, they did 4 internships throughout college. So they have, a cumulative 1 year of experience versus someone that maybe did 1 internship. So just grouping it together makes it easier to find that information. On your LinkedIn, you can't separate it like that, but, the LinkedIn makes it a little bit easier to kind of scroll and see each job. And then, expand upon and corroborate your resume. There's no limits. You can put as much information as you want on your LinkedIn profile. LinkedIn only shows like 3 or 4 bullet points, and you have to hit see more to see everything else. So with that, you can put as much. I typically recommend at the very least copy and pasting the sections of your resume under each job on your LinkedIn. Especially because, again, if we're doing keyword searches, it can be exhausting to have to do your resume and your LinkedIn and update them both. Like you already updated your resume, and maybe that's where you use your master resume and just copy and paste everything on your master resume onto your LinkedIn profile. Your profile will be more likely to be seen if there's more on it, but also if someone's looking at your LinkedIn and trying to figure out like, okay, are they a fit for this job? What are they doing? And your title is just associate and it doesn't have anything under it. It's like, okay, are they a marketing associate, a lab associate, an engineering associate? What kind of associate are they? So making sure that like your LinkedIn is specific. And then same thing, like job titles are so different at every company. So typically what I would recommend doing is with your job title on your LinkedIn and your resume, if it's like obscure or you're finding that the title you have is not relevant to the job, like doesn't like align with what is standard in the industry, I would have somewhere in your description of your role, like let's say your title is just like my title, for example, is Senior Partner Life Sciences. That tells no one that I'm a recruiter. It can mean literally anything. So in my description, I have Senior Recruiter on the Life Sciences team at Proven Recruiting, right? So making sure that like the industry standard name is somewhere on your profile. Or if your title is just like, let's say if it is just Senior Partner Life Sciences, I might just add the word recruiter to the end of my title. Because when we do job title searches on LinkedIn, if that word is anywhere in the title on your current role or past role, depending on how they do the search, you'll still pull up. So just make sure that whatever keyword is more likely to be pulled will kind of be somewhere in that title. Just because I know that that's a big one. The titles are very inconsistent. So finding just like the most average one that comes up. Again, show some personality. I know we said not putting like hobbies or personal interests on your resume. On your LinkedIn profile, fair game, you put it in your about section, you can interact with posts that speak to who you are, like, this is the place to show your personality, again, that could be in your picture. Some people do like, some people put like, if they really like comedy, they'll put jokes in there about, or they'll talk about their family or, things they enjoy doing, and it's like partly their career summary and then also their personal summary, and like I said, there's no limit, you could put as many words as you want on your LinkedIn page. So LinkedIn's a great way to show your personality. Make recommendations and endorsements to receive them. Basically, like you can on LinkedIn, you can endorse people for either for specific skills, or you can write like almost like a review of that person, essentially, like leave them a recommendation on their profile. So, maybe you and a couple friends or you and a couple colleagues like go on and like endorse each other on different skills and provide specific, like you can endorse someone and be like, oh, I worked with Jennifer for 5.5 years in the recruiting space. She's an expert in all things biotech in San Diego. Like something as simple as that, but highlighting like the things that like, advertise that person. So, and usually if you endorse someone or leave like a recommendation for them on LinkedIn, they'll return the favor. And you can even, like it says, you can ask for recommendations with the pre-written one. You can ask people like, hey, I reached out to Jen. Hey, Jen, do you mind leaving me a recommendation on LinkedIn, explaining, X, Y, and Z, aspects of the project we worked on. Okay, she can just pretty much copy and paste that into the message and there's not too much thought for her. So if you're also going to ask for them, the more information you give them that they can use, the more likely they are to do it, because then it takes them less time. And you're kind of like, returning the favor on the front end. And then make as many connections as you can. You can go to anyone's page, really. You can look at their connections. You can go to a company page and filter first, second, and third connections. Connect with people in fields you're interested in, people that are in the fields that you're in, people that are at companies you're interested in, people that are companies that are leaders in the space that you want to be in or are in. Follow people that like tend to post a lot. You can see like if they have a lot of followers. Oftentimes with LinkedIn, if they have a lot of followers, it'll automatically follow them when you send them a connection request. But engage with them. And then like the identify decision makers, to skip the line. I think there's a slide on this later about like kind of how to get your application seen. But realistically, like if you are, let's say, okay, right, you're going into your junior year of college, you have 2 years left of school, and you're going to be looking for a job in 2 years. Use this time now to, connect with people, interact with their content, like, and kind of get your name in front of them. So that way, maybe, the summer going into your senior year or into the second semester of your senior year, you've been interacting with them, they know who you are. So if you do reach out to them like, hey, wanted to get your, looking for a role, and I noticed it would be interesting, it's not like as cold, because you're not just like connecting with them and reaching out to them being like, hey, help me, you've been interacting with them, and it's a little bit warmer because they now recognize your name. And then same thing, like that way, if you do apply to a job there, it's a little bit like, hey, I just applied to this position, wasn't sure if you're the right person to contact, but wanted to let you know, I just wanted to follow up on my interest in the position. And they're like, oh, Jennifer's been interacting with me for 2 years, so it's not cold. It doesn't have to be 2 years, it could be 2 months, 3 months, but like you don't want to just like accept the connection request and then immediately get hit with the like, hey, I need this for you, right? Like I wouldn't personally want that, so just kind of giving what you would want to receive is typically what we recommend. And then, also kind of back to the identify decision makers. Let's say you are applying for a role and you notice that someone you are connected with is friends with that person, is connected with that person. You can also ask that person for an introduction. So someone that you've been interacting with or have had conversations with, like even if it's just chatting back and forth on LinkedIn, like you can be like, hey, I noticed you were connected with so-and-so. Do you have a relationship with them? Do you mind making an introduction? Because I'm interested in learning more about X, Y, and Z. So kind of the same thing on that. That was a lot of information. Questions? Cool. Okay. Online presence. Oh, go for it, Dominic.
So do you honestly recommend connecting to people that you've never met, like personally, just like connecting to as wide as a net as you can?
Yeah.
Because I've been told before, like if people see that you're connected to just everyone and anyone, it's almost a bad look. So I'm a little bit hesitant to just connect to people I've never even met before. So what is your take on that?
No, I don't. I mean, I've never heard that. I would say, like, again, the more people you're connected with, the more likely you are to come up. I also think that, like, I think that people on LinkedIn, like, it's not typically as much insight into their personal life. I mean, I have like probably 5,000 connections on LinkedIn. Maybe I've met them, probably not. But just interested in like seeing their content, especially because if you're connecting with like hiring managers or executives or like manager level people at those companies, they're more likely to be engaging and posting their own content on LinkedIn. And then even like, you know, your friends, your colleagues, people that are, you know, that also work at Aquillius that you might not have met, right? Like they'll see the mutual connection, they'll accept it. I don't think it's like bad form to have a ton of connections. I think if anything, it shows that like you're going out of your way to put in the effort to like network and like see what's going on in the market. You're, you know, interested in learning information and digesting the content that people are posting. So I don't think it's bad to have a lot of connections. I think that if I see someone only has 50 connections on LinkedIn, I might assume that they're not as active on LinkedIn. They might not be as likely to respond to me. Probably like 70% of people will accept your request. Some people might never accept it, and that's fine. But you know, I think you can connect like 100 people a week on LinkedIn, and then it'll just like tell you like, oh, you picked a match. Yeah.
Yeah, so and maybe again, because we're in recruiting and business development, so our jobs is to connect with as many people as possible. But I don't think it's a negative. I mean, definitely if somebody's in the biotech, pharma, med device space, I'm going to try to connect with them. And they're predominantly are strangers, right? I haven't met them yet. The goal is I want to meet them. But you know, let's say like if it's real estate or just something entirely not in my field, I'm not targeting those unless I decide, oh, maybe I want to consider this. So it is targeted strangers, I guess. But to Sydney's point, I don't think it's a negative at all. So I would say go ahead and connect with that.
Also, on the point of connecting, sorry, like a million things are going to my mind as I'm talking. When you send the connection request, I don't think there's any, I shouldn't say I don't think there's any value. I don't think there's necessarily as strong of a benefit adding a note to your connection request. I would say when people see a note on the connection request, they're assuming you're connecting with them because you need something from them. Even if you just say, hey, just looking to grow my network, would love to stay connected, like even that, they're assuming, okay, this person is probably going to reach out to me about something, so they might be more hesitant to accept your LinkedIn profile or your request. I typically recommend just send the request with no message or anything, and then engage with their content a little bit, like once they've accepted it, and then once you engage with their content a little bit, or you're posting on your LinkedIn, and like I see it'll have basically if someone likes my post that I've never talked to before, like I'll send them a message being like, hey, thanks for interacting with the post. Was there anything specific you liked about this, or like what caught your attention on this, right? Because then like you're asking them a question based on something they interacted with, or if that you see that they like a post that you're interested in, hey, this is you know really interesting information. If you have any background on this, like would love to learn more. You know, like you can use that, but like basically connect with them with no note, engage with their content, and then send them the message introducing yourself or you know kind of networking with a reason to reach out to them versus sending it when you send it.
Yeah, and one other thing too, just like let's say you are looking for work or you're in school, but you know you will be in a year or two. It's always good you could follow companies that you're interested in potentially working for, or follow companies you find interesting that you'd like to know more about, because then you'll get their updates too, and it just keeps you more aware of what's going on in the market and your area of expertise, and then over time you'll connect with the actual individuals.
Also, people love helping alumni of their schools, so like I would connect with people from state. Even if you are reaching out to them about like if someone at a company you're targeting to work at went to the same school as you, or they're from the same town as you, or whatever the connection is, like bring up that connection, even if it's something like your school, right? Like it might not feel it. People love to help alumni, especially if you went to, you know, a smaller school or you were part of a specific program or specific club or, you know, things like that. Like even at different schools, mention it when you message them. Like, you know, if you are like when you do reach out to them, like when you get to that point, like feel free to reference that, like, hey, I'm getting ready to graduate from San Diego State in the fall or in the spring. You know, I realize that you've also graduated from there. Like, would love to, if you have some time, you know, pick your brain on like, you know, transitioning into the workforce, right? Like, lean on that connection because they're more likely to want to help an alumni or someone that has a connection to them versus someone that is just, you know, has a connection. So, yeah, go for it.
if we're on LinkedIn and we're looking to like post, we see something that we are really interested in, want to ask a question about it, but we haven't connected with them. Do you think it's like a bad idea? Like, I guess like since you said not to send a note, like it will take some time for like me to like the pictures and like there'd be like a week or two from the point that I saw that I wanted to ask a question to the time that I sent a note. Do you think like that would be like too long to like go back to asking a question about that initial post? I don't know if that makes sense. Like,
No, I know what you're saying. So I do think, I guess, in that sense, if you have a specific question about the post, you could have comment your question on the post. I mean, I've noticed a lot of people do respond to the comments on their posts, like, because it increases their own engagement. If they're commenting on it, it's more likely to come up on the feed. So you could either comment your question and then send them a connection request, or if it is a specific, like, follow up on something or question about something, then yes, you can include it in the note. I think it's more so when you're like, hey, just looking to stay connected and network in San Diego, that's a little bit more vague than like, here's this specific question. The downside is that you can only have like 150 characters when you send the note, when you're connecting with someone. So if it's a longer question or a multi-part question, it might be hard to fit it all in that note. And so then with that, like then your message might be like, hey, have some follow-up questions on your post, looking forward to connecting. But even that might not be like specific enough to get them to accept it. So I guess use that, like, you know, I guess you kind of do what you feel best. I don't think there's any right or wrong way to do it, but I think commenting is a great way. You can always comment, connect with them. And then if they don't respond to your comment, you could then follow up on your question in a message once they've accepted your request is probably what I would do. But it's, you know, whatever you want to do, what you feel most confident and comfortable with, so. Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Any other questions on this one? Cool. Online presence, I mean, this is kind of just like referring to other social media. I think that just if you are gonna be, I think it's become more of a thing. I want to say I've personally done it, but a lot of managers are like looking up your name to see if there's anything out there, because ultimately, like, as much as your personal life is your personal life, you are still a representation of them. If they were to hire you. So just make sure anything like on your social media pages, if you are gonna keep them public, is something that would represent you well. Don't want to change your personality for them, that's fine, just make your account private. That way they can't find you, and that's specific to like Instagram, TikTok, you know, Snapchat, things like that, versus like a LinkedIn. Your LinkedIn page should be public. Also on LinkedIn, your profile picture, I would definitely recommend making sure that your picture is visible to everyone, not just people you're connected with. Because that again, the algorithm, if your pictures, if people can see it, they see what you look like, it humanizes you. And then same thing with your name, a lot of people have it so that if they're not connected with you, it's just their first name and last initial, and you can only see their full name if you accept their connection request. So you are actively looking for a role and actively looking to connect and network with people. I would recommend making it so that people can see your page, even if you're not connected. So that way they can, they'll be able to engage with you.
For the profile picture on LinkedIn, have you seen the feature where it says looking for work or like we're hiring? Do you recommend doing that or not doing that? Do you think?
Personal preference. I don't think it matters. I think there's a lot of, I see it a lot on my LinkedIn page where people are like, can we stop saying that the open to work means that we're desperate? I've never personally heard anyone say that. I don't know where that like narrative came from, that's what people are saying. I've never once heard it brought up. If someone has open to work on their profile, like actively on their profile, and they're employed, that either tells me that they've already talked to their manager enough that they're motivated to find a new job, or they're unemployed. Right? Which means I personally, like, that person is someone that I'm going to look at first, because they're in a situation, that's going to need it more than someone who maybe doesn't have open to work on, or, so I think it depends on the person. I don't think there's anything wrong with having it. I think it's great to have it. I think it shows people that you're motivated to look. I think that, it does help kind of push you to the top of those algorithms. And then, like, if you are happily employed, or you're not happily employed, but you don't want your employer to know that you're looking, you can mark yourself as open to work without it showing up on your page. It'll only show up on the back end if someone has like LinkedIn Premium or Sales Navigator, Recruiter, whatever premium platform they have of LinkedIn. It'll show up on the back end when they do those searches. And it does its best to hide that information from anyone that's currently employed at your company. So it's not a perfect system, because if people don't update their LinkedIn, or they're like a consultant that you report to that's not an employee, it might not work, but it does its best. Like, it'll shield anyone that's actively employed on LinkedIn at the company you work at from seeing that you mark. So that's a discreet way to do it. I think if everyone knows you're looking and you want people to know you're looking and engage with things, then like I definitely think it's fine to put it.
Yeah, I don't think that if you are looking for work, I definitely don't think it's a negative, because to Sydney's point, if you see open to work on there, and as a recruiter, we only can call so many people a day. So, and hiring managers too, not just recruiters. So if they see somebody's open to work and they have 20 people to call and 7 of them are open to work, you might call those 7 first, because timing limits too, right? So, I don't think it's a negative at all, so.
Yeah, this one. Oh, also Google yourself regularly. This is like a big one. You never know. Like I had a friend like last year, basically someone created like a fake profile in their name with pictures that were not them. And when you Googled their name, it came up and they had no idea that that profile was even out there. So just Google yourself regularly every couple months, see what's out there. Also like people always ask me, like working in sales, we're practically paid to stalk people. People are like, how did you find my phone number? How did you find my contact information? 99% of the time I just Googled their name and it was like the first thing. So if you don't want people to find that information, Google yourself regularly. You can request it to be taken down from websites. You can, if it is someone making a fake profile of you or things like that, you can report it. But just kind of see what's out there. Also, like it might be things that like you posted when you were, 14 years old and you don't even realize it's out there anymore. But for some reason, when you Google your name, it's one of the first things that comes up. So just do it. It's kind of fun to see what's out there about yourself. It's kind of crazy to see what's out there about yourself. It's a little eye-opening. But yeah, and then, yeah, like I said, when in doubt, just make everything private. ChatGPT, this is kind of talking about what we talked about earlier. I would not copy and paste a job description into ChatGPT and say, hey, write a resume. Because it does tend to spit out very similar information. A lot of companies are building out tools to see like how we would, measure plagiarism between, like with reports and things like that in school. They're using the same tools to see if people are, kind of copy and pasting their resume from services like ChatGPT. So I would use ChatGPT as a tool to make sure your resume makes sense, to make sure it's formatted correctly. Like I would use it for specific aspects of it. I wouldn't use it for the full resume. Kind of like we talked about earlier, you can copy and paste a job description and copy and paste your resume and say, hey, is there anything I'm missing, or what percentage of a